When the meeting of the Dissertation Council for the defense of Lidiia Mishakova's dissertation for the degree of candidate of philological sciences in the scientific specialty 10.02.01, the Russian language, on the topic one component sentences of the conjugate-verbal class, the factor of addressee and addressee, based on Vasiliev's works Tomorrow Was the War and Do Not Shoot at White Swans, according to the order of St. Petersburg State University from the 8th of September 2020, number 7846/1, me, Ivanova Elena Yurievna, Doctor of Philological Sciences, Professor of the Department of Slavonic Philology, St. Petersburg State University, was appointed the chairman of this Dissertation Council, and by the same order the members of the Dissertation Council were approved. Let me introduce them. In the remote interactive mode we have got Sidorova Maria Yurievna, Doctor of Philology, Associate Professor of the Department of the Russian Language, Moscow State University, named after Lomonosov. Can you hear us? The answer is positive. Vasiliev Maria Dmitrievna, Doctor of Philological Sciences, Associate Professor of the Department of the Russian Language, St. Petersburg State University. Can you hear and see us? Yes, I can. Everything is okay. Romanova Tatiana Vladimirovna, Doctor of Philological Sciences, Professor of the Department of Applied Linguistics and Foreign Languages, Nizhny Novgorod affiliated branch of High School of Economics. Tatiana Vladimirovna, can you hear us? And Rafael Tirado, Doctor of Philology, Professor at University of Granada, Spain. Professor Tirado, do you see and hear us? Yes, I can hear you well. And can you hear me? We also can hear you well. Our applicant, Mishakova Lidiia Leonidovna, is also here with us. Also, there is a scientific supervisor, Kazakov Vladimir Pavlovich, Doctor of Philology, Professor of the Department of the Russian Language, St. Petersburg State University. To improve the quality of communication, I ask you, dear colleagues, who are in the remote interactive mode, to turn off your microphone. But do not forget to turn them on when you are given the floor, and please don't put away your mobile phones in case of emergency. I also inform you that audio and video recording of our meeting is being conducted, as well as live broadcast on the St. Petersburg State University website. Simultaneous interpretation of speeches from Russian into English is being provided. At this time, an email address is posted on the live broadcast of the meeting of the Dissertation Council, where during the meeting all listeners can express their opinions and send questions to the applicant online concerning his dissertation and current scientific discussion of her speech. These questions will be forwarded to me by technical services, and I will voice them during the discussion. Questions must be related to the applicant's presentation and the content of the dissertation, and the name, position, and place of work of the author of the question must be indicated. Questions that are not related to the scientific discussion, to the discussion of the dissertation, to the text and assessment of the dissertation itself will not be voiced. In accordance with the procedure for awarding the academic degrees of Candidate of Sciences, academic degree of Doctor of Sciences at St. Petersburg State University, approved by local regulations of St. Petersburg State University, a meeting of the Dissertation Council is considered eligible if at least 2/3 of the approved membership of the Council takes part in its work, but not less than 4 people. Our Dissertation Council consists of 5 people. All of them are present, including those 4 in the remote interactive mode. All members of the Dissertation Council and the applicants are provided with audio-visual contacts, thus there is a quorum. The procedure of today's meeting of the Dissertation Council, with a total duration of approximately 2 hours, is the following. This procedure was sent to the board members by email. I'm not, in this regard, I offer you not to read this procedure out. Do you agree? You send this regulations, I would like to draw your attention that the speeches of all board members are planned for 10 minutes per each speaker, and our reviews are placed at the website of St. Petersburg State University, and you have the right to voice only the main provisions of your report as well as the remarks and questions. Dear colleagues, do you have any objections or questions concerning this procedure? No questions. Thank you. If there are no objections, I will proceed to the implementation of the rules of the meeting. Mishakova's dissertations for the degree of the candidate of philological sciences in the scientific specialty 100201, the Russian language, on the topic one component sentences of the conjugate-verbal class, the factor of addressee and addressee, based on Boris Vasiliev's works Tomorrow Was the War and Do Not Shoot at White Swans, was accepted for the defense by the order of the Scientific Secretary of St. Petersburg University from the 8th of September 2020, number 7840/1. Mishakova wrote her dissertation research on the basis of St. Petersburg State University. The scientific supervisor is Kazakov, Doctor of Philological Sciences, Professor of the Department of the Russian Language, St. Petersburg State University. The number of publications of the applicant in which the main scientific results of the dissertation are stated, according to the list presented, 5 works. In peer-reviewed scientific publications from scientific journals from the list approved by the Ministry of Education and Science of the Russian Federation, 3 publications. There are no publications in journals indexed in the scientometric databases Web of Science and Scopus. The applicant submitted to the Scientific Secretary a complete package of documents for acceptance, for consideration and defense of the thesis. All the documents correspond to the clause 12 of section 3 of the procedure. All the documents submitted by the applicants I received from the curator meet the requirements and are stored in the applicant certification file. Their copies are held by an employee of the Department for Maintenance the Activities of Dissertation Council, who is now in the hall. Before giving the floor to the applicant, dear members of the Dissertation Council, do you have general questions to the applicant? And if there is a necessity to announce and consider the entire list of documents submitted by the applicant for the defense? There is no necessity to do this. Thank you very much. Lidiia Leonidovna, the floor is yours. You have got 20 minutes for your speech. Good afternoon, distinguished board members, guests. Today I would like to present my dissertation, the topic of which is one component sentences of the conjugated verb class, the address and addressee factor, based on the works of Boris Vasiliev, Tomorrow Was the War and Do Not Shoot the White Swans. My work is devoted to the peculiarities of the functioning of one component conjugated verb sentences, which are associated with the personality of the addresser, of the message, its addressee, and the relationships between them. One component sentences have already been studied in sufficient detail from the point of view of structure and meaning in the works of such scientists as Peshkovsky, Shakhmatov, Babaitsev, Valgin, Zolotov. Nevertheless, it is necessary to expand the description of these sentences from the point of view of pragmatics, that is, to characterize the features of the use of these sentences caused by certain intention of the speaker. This explains the relevance of my work. The purpose of this study was to analyze how the features of the address of the message, its addressee, and the relationships between them are expressed using the form of the main member and the lexical composition of one-part sentences of the conjugated verb class. As a theoretical basis for the research, apart from the mentioned authors, the works of Arutyunova, Karaulov, Bulygina, Shmelev, Vinokur, and others were used. We include definite personal, indefinite personal, and generalized personal sentences to one-part conjugated verb sentences. The total number of sentences of each type in both works can be seen on the slide, table 1. These fictions were selected for the analysis due to the fact that they contain a large number of characters playing various social and situational roles and connected by a variety of relationships: husband and wife, son, teacher and pupils, son and father, boss and subordinate, and so on. In both works, the author, including with the help of one-part conjugated verb sentences with the different forms of the main member, shows the reader the character's feelings, his emotional state, and his attitude to the addressee. For some characters, the author seeks to evoke the sympathy of the reader to someone on the contrary, disregard and condemnation. The writer seeks to achieve such an effect both through the speech of the characters and through the author's speech. In the speech of the characters, one-part conjugated verb sentences are involved in the expression of various speech acts, and in the speech of the author, in the transmission of various functional semantic type of speech. When we consider both speech acts and types of speech, the ways of expressing the main member of one component conjugated verb sentence, as well as the role of subordinate parts and neighboring sentences, including parts of a complex sentence, were analyzed. The hypothesis of the research is as follows. In the course of the research, it was found out that in most cases the use of one-member sentences with one or another feeling is due to pragmatic factors. The addressee seeks to place accents in a certain way, express his attitude towards the reported and the interlocutor, and also influence the perception of the interlocutor of this message in order to achieve the specific goals. At the same time, the use of certain one-member sentences is conditioned by the communication situation, the nature of the relationship between the addressee and addressee, their social and situational roles. Also, in the course of the study, a comparative analysis of the use of one-part conjugated verb sentences in two works was carried out. The differences were shown, which are due to the presence in the work of certain communication situations and the author's intention. As can be seen from the table, in both works, the speech act of the order prevails. In table 2, you can see those speech acts which are presented with the help of definite personal sentences by the numerous examples. No less than 25 examples in one work. As you can see from the table, in both works, the speech act of the order prevails. In the novel Don't Shoot at White Swans, it is mainly used in a conversation between the boss and the subordinate, or a husband with a wife, while in the novel Tomorrow Was the War, in a conversation between a teacher and pupil, or a strict mother with her daughter. In most cases, the order is transmitted in sentences with the main member expressed by verb in imperative mood, but there are cases of using sentences with the main member in the indicative mood of the future tense. For example, tomorrow you will hold an emergency Komsomol meeting. Here we can see indicative mood. The statement refers to the speech of the teacher Valentina Andronovna and is addressed to Iskra. Also, the main member in the indicative mood can also be expressed by performative verb. Please pay attention to the second example from the novel Don't Shoot at White Swans. The speech of Yegor during his conversation with his wife. The second, Yegor said the state is very well understood. Everything is counted by the state, and therefore I demand to escape from the forest. When the addressee uses performative verb, he explicits his right to give the order, and also because he is not sure that his order won't be fulfilled at once. And as for indefinite personal sentences, table 3 shows functional semantic types of speech. It is reflected with the help of indefinite personal sentences. They are represented by not less than 12 examples. As you can see from the table, indefinite personal sentences in the text of the novel Don't Shoot at White Swan are more often found in the narration, a story about the actions of officials and about the performance of a job or a task. It is connected with the fact that in these texts there are a lot of dialogues between bosses and subordinates. And as for Tomorrow Was the War, mainly more precisely when describing the life of a collective, in this case a class or family, and also when describing a friendly meeting, it is connected with the fact that in this story there are a lot of situations of communication between friends or family. In both works there are a lot of examples of reflections. In the novel Don't Shoot at the White Swan, more often than in the story Tomorrow Was Therefore, the inner reflections of the characters are given, including cases of improperly direct speech. Let us consider this with an example of such a kind of reasoning and justification. The novel Don't Shoot at White Swans contains several examples. What a scene! Yegor was afraid of the bazaar. He was afraid, did not trust, and so believed that he would still be deceived. At the same time, they will they will deceive somehow, and you only need to dream about how not to be deceived with the some kilograms at once. In this statement, the author describes Igor's thoughts and experiences during a difficult period of time for him. When Yegor, I had to go to the market for the first time in my life. The form of the future tense indicates the actions of other people in the bazaar, which Yegor expects and of which he is afraid in advance. Let us give another example, but one consideration here apparently was not enough. No matter how Kolka thought, something else was required, and therefore, blinded by tears, he went to where he believed, and without consideration they would understand everything, figure it out and help. Here the state of the boy Kolya is characterized after being hit by his father for the first time in his life. Kolya went to his teacher Nonna Yurievna for support. The form of the future tense indicates what kind of reaction Kolya expects from the teacher, what he hopes for. At the same time, I would like to speak about generalized personal sentences in brief. In author's speech, in the slide you can see functional semantic types of speech which are expressed with the help of generalized personal sentences. Most part of the examples, not less than 3 examples, because there are not so many generalized personal sentences in the text. As you can see from the table, such types of sentences are used during the statements, reflections. Let us give some other examples from the novel Don't Shoot White Swans. The color of haze does not like red. Overdo it, it will go into the cold, into the density. If you fail to do it, it will hit pink. The above mentioned fragment characterizes Yegor's work at the boat station, where he was supposed to paint the oars. The main members are expressed in perfective verbs. This describes the potential for an action and also shows the consequences of these actions. At the same time, the main members are in the form of the second person. In this way, the author, as it puts the reader in the place of the one who performs these actions. Another example from the story Tomorrow Was the War. This is how Artyom learned about love, because of which they flee from their home. As we can see in this sentence, the main term stands in the form of the present tense of the third person. This is how the author describes strong love through the characteristics of actions usually performed by the person who experiences this feeling. Thus, in the course of the study, the structure of one component sentences of the conjugated verb class involved in the transmission of various speech acts and functional semantic types of speech was analyzed. The role of the form of the main member, as well as secondary members and context in the expression of various semantic shades, were considered. The features of the addressee, relations between them, as well as communication situations which affect the choice of the addressee of certain one-part sentences were analyzed. Summing up, let us say that it is necessary to continue research of one-part conjugated verb sentences in this direction, since these make it possible to understand which intentions of the addresser in a certain situation of communication with this or that addressee can be more successfully conveyed using these sentences. Thank you very much for your attention. Dear colleagues, now we have got an opportunity to ask questions. Our applicant, according to the text of her report or the text of the dissertation. Dear colleagues, do you have any questions? No questions. I have got a question. In your work, you logically use the term the main member of the one component sentence. Usually this choice is done when we correlate the features of subject and predicate. On page 16 we see a different concept in connection with the textbook on stylistic of the Russian language, and this concept involves the fact that the subject should present in such structures, but it is not of high importance. Please specify your position and why you avoid the term predicate. You're right that we mean by one component sentences. These are sentences in the center of which is the personal form of verb, and at the same time the position of nominative case is preserved, but the nominative case of subject of the action, state or feature is meant, but it is not occupied. In this respect, we decided to use the term main member of the one component sentence because it is a different structure and it has got its own peculiarities. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. Do you have any other questions? No questions. And now let us to turn to the next part of our agenda, the reviews of the board members and external reviews, but there are no external reviews. That's why we can turn to the speeches of board members. I would like to give the floor to Marina Yurievna Sidorova. Please, the floor is yours. Dear colleagues, dear chairman, can you hear me? I would like to announce only those parts which can prove the significance of the dissertation, its compliance with the requirements of the speciality 10.02.01, and announce my remarks and questions. I will skip the part of the review which is of descriptive character. Everyone can read my review at the website of St. Petersburg State University. My assessments are positive. The main dignity of the dissertation in 3 provisions for the defense. There is actuality and scientific novelty, which are beyond the limits of language material. Our candidate limits her conclusions by one component sentences, but the provisions for the defense prove the construction and functioning of the Russian languages according to Vinogradov, and I analyzed this work when I prepared my report for Vinogradov's reading, and my report was devoted to the reflections on Vinogradov's communicative units, sentences, and this part of the formulation of Vinogradov is taken for granted, or it is out beyond attention. And the work of Mishakova proves that Russian one-component sentence complies with the rules of the Russian language, which allow us to build such constructions and solve different communications problems. And the choice of the model of the sentence and modifications is stipulated by the range of interacting factors which reflect the interaction, the unit of the environment and context. Denotative reference situation in the message, characteristics of the participants of communicative act, intention of the speaker, they influence not only the choice of synthetic structure for this particular message, and the possibilities of their modifications. I use the terminology of Galina Alexandrovna Zolotova, models of the sentence, the opportunities of its modification, which comprise the system of Russian syntaxes. Everything this is analyzed in the dissertation. The models and modifications of the sentence gelled and are stored in the brains of the speaker, and the dissertation proves this, and this important factor for the interaction of the linguistic system and linguistic material. This fact, the dissertation demonstrates and proves and shows this important fact. Theoretical significance of the work is in the proof of this, the functioning of the language. The author is within the frames of the specialty, the Russian language, and the study has interesting information for the theory of the Russian language on the whole, and our candidate had to analyze specific structures in the text to serious general linguistic generalization. There are some arguable statements, and of course there are some questions, and let me voice them. I can't understand the angle of our candidate concerning the sentences on of objectives. Our candidate writes, I think that in order to characterize the speech act of promise, we should use the formulation including the statement of the intention of the speaker to perform or not to perform the action, or to provide the performance or non-performance of the action of other people. And they used in the dissertation indefinite personal formulation. The action should be performed, and explicit conclusion of the speaker in the position of the subject of the opinion, separated from the subject of action, contradicts the opportunity of the use of definite personal sentences for the expression of the promise. The same situation is with the sentences which express precaution. Number two, I think that under communicative functional anthropocentric approach taken in the work, and the consideration of definite personal sentences with predicate of the first person of singular, both one component, it is expressed by the flexion of the verb and are incomplete. And predicativeness of the sentence was not analyzed, and definite personal sentences means using opportunities given by the communicative situation without any semantic accumulation or modification. I do so because I always do so. They do so because they always do so. I would like to highlight that it deals with the sentences with the predicate of the first person singular. And remark 3 It concerns the literary list and is a formal character out of 104 names. There are only 4 in English, 1 work of Austin and 3 works by Searle, and they are available only in the Russian translation and published in 1960s, 1970s. And with such abundance of English bibliography, I have got a question. To what extent it makes sense that in the dissertation of 2020 you focus on the theory which was created long ago, but all my remarks don't spoil the overall impression from the dissertation. I am sure that our candidate used modern methods, and she prepared completed original work on the actual topic. The dissertation of our candidate on the topic, 1 component sentences of the conjugate-verbal class, the factor of address and addressee, based on Boris Vasiliev's works Tomorrow Was the War and Do Not Shoot at White Swans, complies with the requirements of the order from the 1st of September 2016, number 6821/1, the order of on awarding degrees at St. Petersburg State University. And our candidate Mishakova Lidiia Leonidovna deserves the scientific degree of the candidate of philological sciences on speciality 10/0201 Russian language. Point 11 of the order was not violated by the candidate. Dear applicants, you have the opportunity to choose how to answer. I offer you to answer after each review. First of all, I would like to thank Marina Yurievna for her advice and remarks. As for the Speech Act involving promise, this Speech Act involves the intention of the speaker to perform a certain action, and in the works of Austin and Searle there is a formulation when in the text of dissertation we mentioned when we sure that the action would be performed, and it is stipulated by his intention to perform an action. As for the Speech Act precaution, I would like to give the example from the text you mentioned. This is the example from the novel Don't Shoot at White Swans. We will give you the bill, and would you like to count? And this statement is addressed to Forester Buryanov, but Yuri Petrovich, a new forester, was going to fire him due to numerous mistakes, and it is addressed to the boss. It is addressed to the third party, and it is addressed to the boss. And when we speak about the Speech Act of precaution, we mean that addressor has the right to warn someone, and in this case the subordinate does not have the right to give to warn his boss. He wants to show that he is not the last person. That's why this sentence is characterized as a precaution, despite the fact that it is of ambiguous character. As for indefinite personal sentence with the main member of the first person singular, I read, I do something. In such sentences, the subject's relevance is bright because it is I. Nevertheless, we insist on the fact that it is the type of one-component sentences. All the linguists who consider definite personal sentences as a separate class, we follow this conception and refer them to one-component sentences. As for the list of literature, I'm sorry for the inaccuracies and so on. We know that there are a lot of works of modern authors. The works of Austin and Searle became key for us out of more modern works. We use the works of Formanovskaya, and thanks to the board members Vasiliev, we composed a list of works. We are planning to study in the near future Levinson, Demyankov, Stepanov, Distilets. We have partly acquainted with the Levinson's work and the works of other scholars we are going to consider, but thank you for your remark and precious recommendations. My answer is finished. Maria Georgievna, are you satisfied with the answer? Yes. Lidiia Leonidovna, thank you very much. I'm fully satisfied. I would like to give the floor to Vasiliev Maria Dmitrievna. Thank you. I will read out some parts of my review. The reading of the dissertation of Lidiia Leonidovna brings me joy because of traditional style, successful language, the sense of style. This work is different by a philological view on the problem. Our author is not limited by strictly linguistic analysis. She also uses separate literary and psychological observations, and the appendixes with calculations are of high value, but they are not fully reflected in the text. For example, in table 2, appendix 1, the correlation of forms of different aspects of the verbs. The analysis of the aspects of the verb and different speech acts is of high interest and can become the topic for the further research. The actuality of the topic can be explained by the fact that the author considers the use of one-component sentences from the point of view of the positions of the author, that is describes not general semantics, pragmatic aspects were not the separate objects of the research. The theoretical significance is defined by the contribution of the author into the description of the context of the use of one component sentences, taking into account pragmatic characteristics of these statements, as well as systematization of main information about the history of the study of one component sentences in the Russian grammatic traditions. Practical results can be used in the lectures on stylistics, syntaxes, and also practical teaching of the Russian language as a foreign one, and the independence of the author concerning the tasks of the researchers without doubt. There were 5 works published on the topic of the research. 3 of them are the articles in the peer-reviewed journals from the list of the Higher Attestation Commission. Some provisions can become the reason for the discussion. As for the description of the literature sources of the question, I will skip this point. I was surprised, but not all the literary sources were cited. On page 42, our author explains how she decided to classify one component sentences depending on the functional semantic types of speech and how they are understood in the work of Nechaeva, 1974, and if the speech acts figured out by our candidate on the basis of the joining of the concepts of John Searle and Fomanovskaya, and taking into account the position of the listener is in the fact that the reaction should come from the listener, and I think that these are not speech acts. I think that the analysis of the author's speech and the analysis of the character's speech is done from different positions. I would take into account registers as it is described in communicative grammar. This question is not clear for me, and please specify the difference between one component and incomplete sentences. For example, example 2 on page 151, they returned in the darkness and were saying goodbye in a haste. I think that this sentence is incomplete, because here we speak about the actions of specific people who were mentioned by the names as the participants on friendly party. Number 4, and you did not take into account the topic of the languages which allow pronoun drops or pro-drop, and those languages which don't allow pro-drops. And to which type do you refer the Russian language? And from this fact, practical analysis of the examples depends on is the semantic or pragmatic difference. Everything depends on your interpretation of definite personal sentences. I think that this the topic of pro-drop should be explained. Generative view on things, and you ignore it. And there are inaccuracies in the interpretation of examples. Page 104, example 6. The sentence only two component personal. On page 161, you mark that the use of indefinite personal sentences in comparison referring to specific known person speaks about the disapproving attitude. And what are the backgrounds for such an interpretation? On page 174, there are two examples of commissives promising. In example 1, the character does not promise anything. She explains what happened to her. In example 2, there is an idea about further events which will occur under certain conditions. Both cases contain you focus on the psychological experience. If a person has the right to make a precaution, has the right to warn the different positions of people, but it is not such reflections have nothing to do with linguistics. Page 59, you ask that addressee flirts and wants to give mysteriousness, and unlike friend Iskra, who thinks about transcendental tasks, her friend Zinочка is only happy feeling growing up woman. It can be considered some pragmatic intentions and purposes. Very often the comments upon the examples are of impressionist character. Semantic differences are out of author's attention. Sometimes there are no comments upon the difference between the singular and plural forms of the verb in this section. Promising, I have already mentioned. As for the use of the imperatives in the function of imperative, there is a lack of them. All these questions can be explained by the author, and on the whole my remarks and some disagreement with separate interpretations don't spoil the overall positive impression from the work. The dissertation is a completed work. It is of high practical and theoretical value and complies with the main requirements of the order from the 1st of September 2016, procedure on awarding academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University, and our candidate Mishakova deserves the degree of the candidate of philological sciences on Specialization 10.021. Point 11 of the order was not violated by the candidate. Maria Dmitrievna, thank you very much. Lidiia Leonidovna, I would like to thank Maria Dmitrievna for the recommendations concerning the literary list. As for the fact that indeed, when we speak about author's intention, to most extent it concerns the speech acts, and as we selected from the text, not only from character speech but also from the author's speech, it was necessary for us to attract functional semantic types of speech. Narration, description, and reflection. In the course of them, the author also strives to cause emotions from the reader, and also wants to influence the reader's opinion. That's why, in our opinion, it is possible to analyze the material with the help of functional semantic types of speech. As for the separation of one component in complete and indefinite personal sentences, this question, needs discussion. We focused on the fact whether we knew the certain number of people. If we don't know the number exactly, we refer this sentence to indefinite personal sentences. The example from the text you have already mentioned. We returned in the darkness, and that's why we said goodbye in a haste at the railway station. The actions of pupils are characterized. They went out of town, and then they returned together. On the other hand, it is very difficult to define whether all pupils were present there or some of them. We can see it from the text. That's why we referred this sentence to indefinite personal sentence. Then I would like to answer the question concerning the languages with prodrops. Of course, the Russian language makes the prodrop possible. It concerns indefinite personal sentences in the sentences with the imperative form of the main member. In rare cases, we use personal pronoun, but of course, in order to use subject, there are special conditions. For example, you go and I will wait for you here. And in this case, we have a contrast, me and you, and it concerns the examples where the imperative form of main member. If we speak about the sentences with the indicative form of the main member, for example, I will give you in your own hands. In the Russian language, we use I, and there is no principal difference. But in this research, it was not the task of our research to show the difference between constructions return, and I return, and in order to characterize the expression of the certain speech act and in which communicative situation, definite personal sentence is used. And if we consider pro-drop in some constructions, it is not only possible but also it is necessary to use, because if the pronoun will be used, the essence of the message won't be clear. Please look at the slides, the example, and Yegor was not aware of that. In this example, we understand that the person Kharitina did not explain anything to Yegor, and if we add they into the sentences that they did not explain anything to Yegor, it's impossible, because in this case we won't understand who they are, because we speak about the action of one person, Kharitina, and the connotation of Yegor's he characterizes her actions in plural, and some negligence for her actions we can see, and in not in all constructions the pro-drop is possible. As for indefinite personal sentences which describe the action of one person, we have already mentioned the example here. We speak about the actions of one person, but the connotation of offense is present. Babaitseva marks that the use of the plural form in sentences describing the action of one person increases the number of actors and gives the meaning to the action, and the utterance becomes more significant. It seems to us that it is possible in the following example. Example number 2 in the slide. Something else was required, and that's why blinded from tears went where everyone would understand him and help him. Nona Yurievna's actions, the teacher, are described here. The main members are in the future form, and as Kolya addressed her in the difficult situation when he was strongly offended, he went to his teacher for support, and all these actions characterize the action of one person, and we can see respect here. It gives the significance to the actions from the point of view of Babaitseva. It is also possible. I would like to answer the question concerning commissives. Let me show you the examples. I was delayed there downstairs. Excuse me, please. And one more example. And under the tent, let us organize tables and the stalls without any drinks, maybe tea, and don't shoot at white swans. In this case, when we consider them commissives, we refer such examples not to promise but to excuse. The first example refers to the speech of Iskra. She tries to explain her being late. It was connected with the fact that she had been attacked before. In the second example, we can see the excuse. The chief of the boat station explains Yegor the fact why there are no alcohol drinks at the boat station. There is a necessity to explain him something, and we refer such sentences to excuses. The remark concerning the fact that our analysis is of impressionist character, I agree with that. When you work with fiction, you are influenced by the characters' overall picture, situation, and sometimes you are involved by the description, and partly it has nothing to do with linguistics, but it is very important because it gives us the opportunity to characterize the utterance to full extent. And also I would like to answer the following questions. In some questions we don't take into account important characteristics. For example, two examples of the act of promise. Thank you, Vika. Iskra smiled at her for the first time, and the other promise from the novel, don't shoot at white swans. It is not the ceiling that leaks, the roof does, because ceiling can't leak. It is designed for another thing. In the first example it is a singular, in the second example it is plural. In the first example we did not comment that it is a singular form because it seemed to us that it is not relevant. It showed that the promise is given from one person. In the next example of promise, the form of plural is very important because it is spoken by the official. He sees himself as a part of the group of specific people, and he speaks on behalf of these people. It seemed to us not so relevant. That's why we skip it. Maria Dmitrievna, thank you very much. Maria Dmitrievna, are you satisfied with the answers of Lidiia Leonidovna? Yes, of course. I don't agree with pupils. There are different situations whether he was arrested or returned after midnight. The answers are clear. And now I would like to give the floor to Romanova Tatiana Vladimirovna. Thank you. I will be as brief as possible. Dear colleagues, you have understood that the dissertation is devoted to the conjugate word type of one component sentences with considered polyfunctional from the pragmatics theory of communication, from the theory of speech acts, and I consider that this defines the novelty and actuality of the research. The problem is very actual because it is very diverse. It is possible to study it from the point of view of different theoretical approaches. The prose of Boris Vasiliev is very considerable material for the research, and 10 years pass is between these two works. Comparative analysis of the peculiarities of expression of different types of speech with the help of one component sentences. And our candidate successfully solves this problem, but it is my personal opinion, but it would be better for you to pay attention to the dynamics of the change of individual author's style. One component sentences as other types of sentences should be considered not only from the point of view of their structure and meanings, but also from the peculiarities of their use caused by the intention of the speaker. In this case, it would be necessary to use the hierarchy of the tasks and analyze in any theoretical paradigm. There is an individual author's style and so on. At the level of textual characteristics and categories, generalization would be possible. Page 9, the sources of the research. In our opinion, the candidate narrowed the formulation of the content of the subject of the research, the expression of the speech acts and types of speech with the help of one component sentences of conjugate-verbal class with different form of main member and lexical feeling. Through the analysis of the text, the candidate analyzed subject in different types of one component texts. The contribution of the candidate in the development of the theory of speech acts is obvious. Among the main results of the research, there are the development of the theory of functions of one component sentences, which is reflected by the provision 1 for the defense as for provision 2 and 3. And the personality of address influences the choice of the type of this sentence and so on. This influences not only the use of one component sentence, and the verification of reliability of the results is proved by the broad and variative empirical basis of the research, the quality of the material for the analysis, and the methods of our author are not limited by the contextual comparative analysis. And the information about the publications and the research of our candidate is very productive, but I also have remarks. Number 1, as for the opinion generalized personal sentences are figured out according to semantic and functional criteria, and in this type of sentence the expression plane and content plane, they are different. But this question is quite clear. For example, and it was explained in communicative grammar of the Russian language by Zolotova, and the article of Tarlanov for the piece in the Russian language. The second question, in order to clarify, paragraph 3.1 and the manifestation of the participant of communication in the role of addresser and addressee in different speech communicative situation. There are a lot of types of communicative situations according to different criteria, and which classification of situation did you follow? Number 3, as for the literature, more modern literature concerning speech acts, the analysis of syntactic structures from the point of view of speech acts is of high importance in the study. I would like to recommend you to get acquainted to more modern, methodologically modern speech acts, the work of Zhana Viktorovna Nikonova, the work where speech acts are viewed as cognitive structures, mainly as frame structures. And number 4, quantitative data in the appendixes. Did you collect them by hand, or did you use some software? And my implicit wish, there are more effective instruments of collecting quantitative data, and qualitative interpretation of statistical data should be improved or updated. Quantitative priority, quantitative characteristics, how does it help to understand different characteristics? And to conclude, I would like to highlight that the scientific research conducted by our candidate has its results. The provisions for the defense were proved. The candidate demonstrated high knowledge of material. It includes the history of question. The conclusions were proved. The candidate actively used the results of modern scientific research. The formal parameters, the volume and the design of the dissertation complies with the requirements. And as for the approbation, the dissertation of Mishakova Lidiia Leonidovna conforms with the main requirements stated by the order procedure on awarding degrees at St. Petersburg State University. And our candidate, Mishakova Lidiia Leonidovna, deserves the degree of the candidate of philological sciences on specialization 100201, the Russian language. Thank you very much. Tatiana Vladimirovna, thank you very much. I would like to thank Tatiana Vladimirovna for her advice concerning the literature. We will try to answer them, As for the status of generalized personal sentences, yes, indeed, at present they are recognized as an independent type by most linguists. In our study, we share this point of view, but we still would like to show alternative opinions on this issue, especially since in some cases it's not easy to distinguish between generalized personal and indefinite personal sentences. As for the classification of situations we use, note that there is no clear classification of situations in the literature. There are only parameters that can be used to characterize them. We have given descriptions of the parameters of the speech situations formulated by Formanovskaya, Gag, and also Levitsky. In our work, the description of the material is made to a great extent in accordance with the concept of Vladimir Grigorievich Gag, who characterizes the structure of the speech situation as follows: the speaker and his addressee, their presuppositions, their intentions and goals of communication, place, time of communication, circumstances of reality, relations between communicants, their social status, characteristics. As for the recommended literature, thank you very much. We will definitely take it into account when the further study will be conducted. Concerning the quantitative data presented in the appendices, they are collected by hand because it seemed to us that we would get a more accurate results. These data were used by us to carry out a comparative characterization of the two works in terms of the use of various one component, conjugated, no voice in the microphone. We collected all the data by hand. I would like to all the data, and I would like to highlight that the use of the data for the analysis of speech images of characters from the point of view of the theory of linguistic personality. Our goal was to describe to great extent not so much the speech of specific characters as using the example to make generalization about the speech of people playing certain social and situational roles, that is, characterizing in different situations the speech of Yegor Palushkin or Iskra Polikova or Karatina. We tried to show the peculiarities of the speech of the husband in the conversation with the wife, the subordinate in the conversation with the boss, or, for example, the features of the speech of the schoolgirl in the conversation with the teacher. This is due to the fact that we did not use this theory of linguistic personality, although we use this theory for a deeper analysis of communication situations and the nature of relations between communications. Once again, thank you very much for the remarks and advice. I have finished with my answers. Tatiana Vladimirovna, are you satisfied with the answers? I would like to give the floor to Professor Tirada for his review. Please speak in the microphone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, distinguished chairman, board members. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to St. Petersburg State University for the trust. And secondly, I'm not going to read out the whole review. I will focus on only some position. I would like to say that the topic of the dissertation is very actual, and I think that the scientific supervisor made his best to find some gap within the frames of this topic, which was studied by the great scholars in Russia. Anatoly Mikhailovich was my scientific advisor of the doctoral thesis, and I know his works well. And the dignity of the research of Mishakova Lidiia Leonidovna is that the attention is focused on the peculiarities of the use of one component sentences connected with the personality of the addressee, and taking into account the addressee. And the scientific novelty of the research is that one component sentences are viewed not from the point of view of the structure of their meaning, but also from the peculiarities of the use caused by specific intentions of the speaker. They are analyzed in compliance with the fact, the expression of which speech acts in the speech of characters. Without taking into account these peculiarities, the description of one component sentences would be incomplete. The results of the research are aimed not only at the filling the gaps and the research on this topic, but also they are the most important and serious contribution to theory of the one component sentences. In our opinion, the source of the research is very successful. The works of Boris Vasiliev, Tomorrow Was the War and Don't Shoot at White Swans. These works gives rich and diverse empirical material for the analysis of one component conjugate verb sentences and different forms of the main member. The work is peculiar because it has successful compositional structure and interesting, diverse and abundant material for the research. Another dignity and peculiarity of the work is the focus on abundant research material and the most conclusions are proved, and the main provisions for the defense, they are reflected in the text of the dissertation. They allow to assess them as independent and having serious scientific explanation. The results of the dissertation confirm systematic conceptual integrity, and they are aimed at the filling the gaps in the research of this linguistic problem. And theoretical, the work has theoretical potential, and as for the sphere of the practical application is of high importance. The practical importance is in the fact that the research can be used in the courses on the syntaxis and pragmatics of the Russian language, and in the practice of the teaching Russian as a foreign language. They will help to non-students, non-native speakers influence in a certain way, influence the addressee a certain way. We have got separate remarks. They don't touch principal provisions in the defense, and they don't spoil the high assessment. They are of recommendation character. The first remark, we would like to recommend to expand the list for further research, the list of the works on the material of which the linguistic research was conducted. And the most interesting is the works of modern Russian literature. 30 years have been passed since Boris Vasiliev's work, Ivanov and so on. They reflect the evolution of the modern Russian language. And secondly, in conclusion, I spoke about it in detail during the report, and it would be better to specify the actual aspects of the most important scientific research on this topic. It is clear that our candidate is an expert at this area, this field, and please think about your further research. The dissertation of Mishakova Leonidovna on the topic one component sentences of conjugate verb class, the factor of addressee and addressee on the basis of Vasiliev's works. Tomorrow was the war and do not shoot at white swans, conforms with the main requirements stated by the order. Procedure on awarding academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University within. And the candidate Mishakova Lidiia Leonidovna deserves the degree of the candidate of sciences on specialization 10.02.01.11 was not of the order was not violated by the candidate. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Tirada for valuable advice and comments, for his attention to my study. I will try to answer them. Concerning the involvement of works of other authors in the research. Thank you very much. Yes. Yes, it really could be very indicative and important and interesting. It would be very interesting in our research. We decided to focus on the works of Boris Vasiliev because we wanted to have illustrative material that is characterized by a similar style of representation. In some fragments of the study, we focus on the third work of this author. The dawns here are quiet, to confirm our conclusions. Let's give an example. Please pay attention to the example from the novel Don't Shoot at White Swan, and Yegor could not understand how he managed to finish 120-inch board 6 meters long and did not break at the same time, and how many times I ran. I also did not remember. There must be a lot. You can't reproach more than 3 once. I tried it. Here reasoning is conveyed, or rather its variety, justification. It is in the second person, and how he wanted to help Nonna Yurivna. This similar example we can see in the work The Dons Here Are Quiet. The second example, Commandant. Commandant did not say anything. Well, these girls go to hell. Just contact us. They will giggle until they fall. Here the author seems to make the reader sympathize with Sergeant Major Vasiliev to substantiate why he initially avoided female anti-aircraft gunners. And for comparison, we took into account your recommendations about the use other authors, and we got acquainted with the modern work of Guzeli Yahina. It is a novel, Guzeliha Opens Her Eyes, and found a similar example there. A wife should not hide from her husband, but what can you do? You have to. We decided to leave a more detailed analysis of the work of the authors for the future. For example, for a broader analysis of the language of the Russian literature in the second half of the 20th, early 21st century. And thank you very much. And as for the further research on the topic, we assume, as we have already mentioned, they will be continued on the material of the works of a wider circle of authors or a completely different source. For example, television news broadcasts or speeches of famous people, politicians or cultural figures. In addition, of course, one can study the functioning of not only conjugated verb sentences, but also impersonal and nominal sentences. For example, the spectrum of our research is very broad, is still broad. Thank you again for dear Professor Tirada for your remarks. Thank you very much. My congratulations. Very successful work. Professor Tirada, I am sure that you are satisfied with the answers of our candidate. Thank you. And allow me to read out the parts of my review. Dear colleagues, the history of the study of one component sentences lasts for decades. It demonstrates the examples of different approaches. The main attention in this area is paid to structural and semantic syntactic characteristic of one component sentences, as well as the problem of conjugation of verb categories and their correlation with the subject of speech. The candidate chooses for her research another aspects which shifts the focus of the analysis to the pragmatic characteristics and communicatively stipulated factors of realization these structures, and she considers these structures in the aspect of functioning in different communicative situations and functional and semantic types of speech, and first of all through the lens of their ability to express these or those intentions of the speaker. And this defines the novelty of this research. and despite the positive assessment of the first part, there are gaps. They have already been mentioned, so I will skip this part. In the research part of the dissertation, our candidate considers the types of speech act for authors speech, judging from the fact that the interaction of address and addressee occurs with the expression of this or that speech act. Our candidate's task is to understand what influences the use of one component conjugate verb sentences in different speech acts and verb temporal and aspect characteristic of the verb, and personal and forms of the predicate are analyzed in connection with social and psychological roles of communicants and the relationships between them, and considerable place in the interpretation of examples in the text of work is given to the psychological portraits of the participants of communication, addressee and addressee. And the most productive are the results of pragmatic analysis of the speech situations containing indefinite personal sentences, the main reasons and effects of the elimination of subjects in indefinite personal sentences are very well described, and the private contribution of the candidate into the description of the object is in the fact that the contexts and communicative situations provoking the use of this or that type of one component sentences are found. The connection between the type of situation of communication and speech act is found, and pragmatic potential and connotative effects of one component conjugate verbal sentences are described, and so on. The tasks of the research on pages 7-8 can be considered completed. Let us turn to remarks. There were several questions, but I got them during the report and our discussion. I have got only one question. Let me voice it. Table 3, classification of speech acts with the semantic of the will. All the parameters have the they point out to positive or negative feature. Are there situations when this or that parameter is irrelevant? And the remarks. Number 1, the research analyzes the expression of the peculiarities of the addresser and addressee of the communication. Page 6-7. Such analysis involves the logics while there is interaction of this or that parameters, and there are questions about the interaction between these factors and how personal numerical form of verb interact with other factors and with other verb categories. As for commissives, we have already discussed them, and you did not include into consideration the personal numerical characteristics in the description of the speech act of reproach and complaining. Number 2, page 57, the use of definite personal sentences with imperative moods and with indicative moods. They are explained equally. Their participation in the dialogue when there is no necessity to name addressee and addressee. Consequently, you don't take into account the difference between types of definite personal sentences which don't require expression of pronoun subject. Number 3, as for personal numerical forms of author's speech, it is necessary to characterize the type of narration which is used in these works of Boris Vasiliev. Number 4, functional and semantic types of speech, apart from communicative and content features, serves as a systematic organization of grammatic and lexical elements. Page 147. Here subtypes are described. They're used for the analysis, and they have the risk to become of situational character. And also consider tables on page 245 and 248, but my remarks don't spoil the overall positive expression from the work, and the conclusions and materials of the research will be useful in preparation for the special courses on Russian language, as well as teaching Russian language as a foreign one, and the dissertation of Lidiia Leonidovna Mishakova conforms with the main requirements stated by the order from the 1st of September 2016, procedure on awarding degrees at St. Petersburg State University, and our candidate Mishakova Lidiia Leonidovna deserves the degree of the candidate of philological sciences 10-0201, the Russian language. Dear Chairman, thank you very much for Elena Yurievna. Thank you for the remarks and recommendations. We will try to answer them. As for the classification of the Speech Act, you can see the table in this slide. We take into account the criteria who is the causer of the action, who is the interested person in the action, and who is higher. All the criteria are relevant and important in each case. As for the Speech Act of the request, we concluded that when making a request, the addressee, we admit that the request may also be contained in a conversation between two equal participants, as in the example you cited, but we did not find such examples in our sources. If we talk about the relevance of all other criteria, we can say that in the case of a speech act of invitation, to joint action, the interested person criterion is rarely possible to consider less important, since the interested party is both the addressee and the addressee. But in other cases, we consider all the criteria to be relevant for all speech acts. Then the next, not all grammatical categories were commented upon by us. Initially, in the text of the dissertation, included a complete analysis of absolutely all categories, both species, temporal characteristics, and person and number. However, later we decided to leave in each fragment of the analysis only those characteristics that seemed to us the most important. So if we consider the omissions, for example, the speech act of a promise, see the example on the slide. Here we see the most important tense aspect characteristics of the verb. Perfective form, the form of future tense, which indicates the readiness of the addressee to certainly perform this action in the future. In this case, the verb as a rule stands in the first person form, so we did not emphasize it further. We also did not describe the singular form, since in this case it will only indicate that the addressee makes a promise exclusively on his or own behalf, and not say from a group of people. We tried to figure out relevant categories in each particular case. Otherwise, the description was too excessive, and not all the information was important. Then, as for pronoun subject, your remark is very precious. Unfortunately, it was not the aim to comment upon the absence of subject in the constructions. We tried to characterize in the expression of which type of speech act it participated. About the type of narration, we will take into account this remark. I would like to comment functional and semantic type of speech. In our work, we figure out several subtypes. A life of a family. It is necessary because we all know that there are some criteria which distinguish description and narration. In description, we think that these types are very important because they try to describe the situation in detail, and we will try comment upon them. Please pay attention to the example in this slide. And here everything This is the example from the story Tomorrow Was the War, and they show the repetition of the action. The life of a family is described here from the point of view which actions were taken for them. Let's compare it with the second example. It describes the life of a person. And again, Yegor ran whatever they sent him, did what he was told to do, fulfilled what he was ordered to do, and he tried to do his best. In sentences of this subtype, we see the main term expressed by a verb of both imperfective and perfective form, in the form of either the future or the present tense. This is how the meaning of orders is conveyed, is expressed. These orders are either in present or can potentially be given in the near future. The life of a person, in this case Yegor, is described through his constant fulfillment of such instructions from his superiors. And the form of the main member is different. It seems very important for us for the distinguishing of different forms of description. Let us comment upon two examples that you paid attention to. Please look at the slide. Timka has come. Guys, pass my brother over here. Before Tom had time to recover, he was seized, lifted, carried along the tables in full accordance with the request, and put on his feet next to Rosa. This example is from a story about a joint pastime. Tomorrow Was a War. And chaotic actions we can see here, and this example can be referred to joint pastime. Let us compare it with another example. She ran into a dark and wholly empty staircase when she was suddenly grabbed, squeezed, dragged under the stairs, and thrown onto the spattered cement floor. This example is a story about a life-threatening situation. Grammatical forms coincide here. Perfective, past tense. We see in this example it's not a grammatic difference, it is semantic difference and lexical difference, because if you take the verbs from the first example, all the verbs apart the verb from cis, these verbs with neutral meaning. If we take into account the second example, all the verbs here ceased and so on, squeezed, dragged. These verbs characterize negative action, violent actions. That's why in this case we don't speak about grammatical differences. We see strict lexical difference between these two types of stories. Thank you very much again, and for your comments and remarks. Thank you very much. I'm satisfied. Dear colleagues, Are there any non-board members who want to have the floor? No volunteers. Are there any questions, online questions, according to the results of the broadcast? No questions. Let us turn to the speech of the scientific supervisor. Distinguished Vladimir Pavlovich, the floor is yours. Distinguished board members, Lidiia Leonidovna Mishakova was a postgraduate student of St. Petersburg State University from 2013-2016. Then she continued her work on the dissertation, being the Russian as a foreign language teacher. She was independent in the choice of the topic and the material of the research. She was very interested in the pragmatic aspects in the functioning of syntactic constructions. She presented the results of the research of the pragmatics of one component sentence on the material of the works of Boris Vasiliev. Mishakova was very hardworking, was very interested in the topic of the research and the linguistic material, and she did not try to avoid difficult for interpretation cases. She did not strive for simplification. Her conclusions are based on more than 400 contexts about conjugation of works based on tomorrow was the word, don't shoot at white swans. Mishakova was very attentive researcher and combining scientific work and teaching activity impeded the preparation of the dissertation, but these circumstances helped our candidate to underline, to highlight the practical significance of the results, and I think that her observations will help her professional activity, and I hope that our candidates will conduct further research in this area. Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, as we conduct the meeting of our council with the board members who are in the remote interactive mode, do you have any questions, as well as our candidates and all those who are present at the meeting of our dissertation council? The questions should concern the technical issues. No questions. I have a question for the board members. Dear colleagues, we have the opportunity before the beginning of our vote to declare a break for the discussion of the results of the defense. We have the right to declare or not declare this break. If we don't declare the break, we continue our meeting and switch to the open roll call. Let us take a decision. Do we need to have a break and switch off the sound of the live broadcast? I don't need it. The same to me? No, we don't need it. I raised the question on awarding Mishakova Lidiia Leonidovna scientific degree of the candidate of philological sciences on specialization 10.0201 Russian language on an open roll call. I remind you that the decision of the Dissertation Council is positive, is more than the half, but not less than 3 board members voted for it. According to point 23, procedure on awarding academic degrees. The question on awarding the scientific degree of candidate of philological sciences on specialty 10.0201, Marina Yurievna Sidorova, your opinion. I'm for. Thank you. Maria Dmitrievna Vayeikova, your opinion. I'm for. Tatiana Vladimirovna Romanova, your opinion. I'm for. Professor Tirada, your opinion. I'm for. And me, Ivanova Elena Yurievna, chairman, I'm for the degree of the candidate of philological sciences on this specialization. Thus, distinguished colleagues and guests, I announce that out of 5 board members participating in the vote, 5 members voted for. There are no those who voted against or abstained. And the decision on awarding Mishakova Lidiia Leonidovna the degree of the candidate of philological sciences, specialization 10.0201 Russian language was accepted. Dear colleagues, in connection with the fact that our meeting is in the remote interactive mode, dear board members or candidate or other who are present, questions concerning the procedure of conducting the meeting. No questions. No questions or objections. Dear colleagues who are present in the hall. Lidiia Leonidovna, I'm very glad. And I would like to express my gratitude to everyone. I would like to thank Kazakov Vladimir Pavlovich for his help, for his advice. I would like to express my gratitude to my family, my close friends, relatives, colleagues for his support and of course I would like to thank the Dissertational Council and those I'm glad No voice in the microphone.
Скажите в микрофон.
The meeting is declared closed. Please switch off the live broadcast of the meeting.